a pick and roll with it. Make a pick and roll with it. Betting weekly. Fast break from coast to coast and way downtown. From coast to coast and way downtown. From coast to coast and way downtown.
Playoffs just rolling along here in the WNBA. Welcome into a live edition of Betting Weekly Fast Break. I'm Doug Kezirian alongside professional handicapper Albert Nguyen. You might know him as Analytics Capper on social media. So we have a couple games tonight as both home teams, the lower seeded home teams in game two, won and staved off elimination. And that one of those teams, again, did it yesterday. So the only team that's advanced to the next round is the top seeded Minnesota Lynx, who did it in dramatic fashion. So some really interesting games to break down coming up in the next little bit. Albert, how are you, my man?
I'm doing great. Last night for my premium or VIP play, I was actually only on Phoenix. I know on this show I was loving the Lynx there, but I didn't like that late movement, which is really important, right, Doug? When you look at these games, especially these games that have a lot more eyeballs on it, you have to respect some of the money that comes in late. And, all that money that was going on Golden State there made me scared of the play. And so I ended up not playing the Lynx, but Phoenix not only got there, but blew out the Liberty on the road.
I certainly played them. So that's an L for me. Pretty frustrating in that regard, but that's okay. That happens, and you can't win every single bet, but Wes and I were on this show a couple of days ago, and we both liked the the Mercury plus 2.5. And I just thought it was they should almost be favored. Just a great spot. And then, of course, they closed 4.5, 5. And I just couldn't believe it. It was such a bad spot. I think this Liberty's team is such a farce. I am writing an article for the New York Post that I've already submitted for tomorrow. And pretty brutal breakdown. I hope I'm right. But I think this Liberty team is a wounded animal that just needs to be put down. But we'll get to that game in a little bit. Since both of us are off the show tomorrow, we can look ahead to tomorrow's game. But we have 2 game threes tonight. Pretty exciting stuff. Just want to remind everyone, if you like what you hear on our shows, sign up for the newsletter, get exclusive tips, and the free Insider magazine. Sign up for free at bettingweeklystudios.com. So a couple big spreads tonight. Not the case tomorrow, but we have some big spreads tonight. And we got to incorporate what we've learned over the years in the NBA. You just got to focus on the spot and not the spread. It's rare that the spread ever comes into play in the NBA. Sometimes it does, obviously. I shouldn't say it's not 100%, but usually you just have to pick the winner, even when you have a spread of 7 or 8 like we do tonight. Let's start with Atlanta, who couldn't hit the broadside of a barn in game 2 in Indiana. They're coming home where they really dominated quarters 2 through 4 to pull away in game 1. So now they're 7.5. 154 is your total. Did the Fever, obviously it was a great spot for the Fever at home and a little bit of a relaxed Atlanta team, but did the Fever do anything that you saw that gives you optimism for tonight's game 3?
I thought the Fever showed a lot of physicality, which is really important in postseason basketball, whether you're in the NBA or the WNBA. So that was actually really cool to see. They basically beat the Dream every single quarter, and that's very rare to do in all professional sports, right? I think they tied the second quarter 15-15, but they beat them convincingly the other 3 quarters. So that is really good stuff from Indiana, who you kind of expected, right? It's kind of a backs against the wall mentality right now with so many injuries. They were at home. They were just coming off a bad loss there. With that said, though, I do like the Dream in this spot. I've liked the Dream all season long. I'm not going to change. And I think the fact that them losing in game 2 is going to be a blessing in disguise for this team in the long run. Not saying they have a legitimate shot to win it all, because I still think it's the Lynx, title to lose. But the Dream at home, we know what their home court advantage is, Doug, throughout the year. 16-6 at home overall, 30-14. They were the number 3 seed for a reason, with a really legit shot at number 2. I like the Dream tonight. 7.5. I'm not going to play it. I'm gonna tease this, Doug, but it's gonna be leg one of a money line parlay. I'm assuming you know what I'm gonna go next, but I like the Atlanta Dream money line as first part of my parlay.
So you're saying there's value with everything on the line, and the money line is correlated. Basically, if a spread is 7 in the W or 7.5, then the money line's always this, right? Like the odds makers, the market knows that. You're saying because of the stakes of the game, the desperation, all that there's an edge, so to speak, on the money line. I could see that. I agree. I think that's an astute observation. The Fever did show me some, physicality, and I think that's true. What about the total? The first two games have gone way under the total. So the total for game 3 has gone from 158, 59.5 to 154. So there's been an adjustment, but they've both gone way under this. How would you play game 3 total if you had to play it?
Yeah, for those who haven't been following the Indiana Fever without Caitlin Clark, it's actually been an under machine. I think they've hit 7 of the final 8 games in a regular season as unders. Without their offensive spark, not only Caitlin Clark, but Sophie Cunningham, who was shooting lights out from 3 before she got hurt. They've really leaned into, like I mentioned earlier, the physicality on the inside, playing really hard defense in the half court, and then letting players like Mitchell do their thing in the offense. So I like the under again in this one. It's hard for me from a value standpoint, Doug, just because it's moved so much. And me, I don't like chasing steam, especially this late in the game and especially in the postseason game. But I think it is low for a reason. And I think that's where Atlanta wants to play as well. Atlanta, with all their bigs and their size and their versatility on defense, they want this to be low scoring. They want to dominate the boards and really just dominate down low. So I see a low scoring game. It is game 3, which is an elimination game, which usually favors the under anyways, but I'm laying off the total. I would love to hear your thoughts, whether you like the over or under.
I'm playing under 154. I think the refs swallow the whistle. They certainly did in game 2. I know that Atlanta's probably going to get a little bit more favorable of a whistle, but there's just a familiarity as a series goes on. This happens in the NBA. Remember the Warriors with their crazy, offense with all the moving around. It's much harder to go from like facing the Hawks to facing the Spurs and then facing this Warriors slip screens and everything. But you face them in a row. So every Warriors playoff series, like starting with game like 4 on, always tends to go under. And I don't even care about the adjustments because there's just a familiarity. Obviously, defense tightens. The effort on defense is higher in the playoffs. I think this is going to be a little bit of a slog fest like the first 2 games, right? And this Fever offense, Kelsey Mitchell's going off and things like this, but they're limited, man. I just think there's only so much you can do. And by the way, over the last 15 games in the advanced metrics, the Atlanta Dream had the number 1 defense in the W.
Wow.
Them in terms of net rating, the Aces and Dream. So we know the Aces won 1 million games in a row, right? They're 15.4 net rating. Atlanta's 15.0. So the fact that you think they're going to win, just get the W, I can't complain. And by context, the next team after 15.0 is the Valkyries at 6.6.
Wow.
So a huge drop off. So the Dream and the Aces, no one's been playing better than them over the last 15 games. And they are obviously 2 contenders behind the Lynx. I certainly can't get in your way with the money line parlay. I'm going to play the under 154. So I'm on the board as well as my first official play. Any props stand out? Kelsey Mitchell's getting the shot volume. Obviously, she's crafty, can shoot the lights out. So even though I like the under, I was looking at her over, but I don't think she's going to go for like 27 like she did in game 1. I think it's going to be close around like the low 20s. So over 18.5 and 19.5 makes it a bit sweaty.
Yeah, it's tough because Kelsey Mitchell, I mean, you and I are big fans of hers, and the way that she can manipulate an offense in the half court manipulate the defense in the half court is great just because of how she can play the pick and roll and pick and pop and things like that. She is coming off a game where she hit 4 threes, which is, I think close to a season high. I think she hit 5 once earlier this year, 4 a couple times, but she's a great shooter. Don't get me wrong. But the fact that She's coming off a game where she was 4 for 8. Makes me tend to err on the side of regression a little bit. And again, she's going to get a ton of usage. She's going to get a ton of opportunities. With all the injuries, she is, the main focal point on offense. And like I said, like, she's a half court player. So Indiana is going to want to play in the half court, which is completely different from what people expect when they think of the Indiana Fever. So I like your underplay a lot for the game. As far as the player prop here, I'm usually, I don't go, even though they're not directly related, Doug, I usually don't go against myself. So if I'm on the full game under, I'm not going to be on a player prop over, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. I'm going to get involved here with Naz Hillman. I was on her in the last game, didn't get there, but I think it was an outlier performance. The entire Atlanta Dream laid an egg in the first half. She was held scoreless and then finished with 8. The shot volume was there. She missed a contested layup. I'm going to go over 8.5 points at minus 134. Now, I know she's in the running for 6th player of the year, and she's probably going to win, but she has started, I want to say, 17 games. She's a much bigger part of their offense than you would think, even with Alicia Gray and Ryan Howard and Brianna Jones. They actually get the ball to Hillman. It's because Howard and Gray draw so much attention on the perimeter. Hillman can stretch the defense. She's a stretch 4, essentially. She's open. And she also finds her way to get points around the paint, whether it's offensive putbacks, things like that. So I'm going to play Hillman again. I'm going back to the well. She had 16 in game 1. 8 in the second half alone of game 2. I think we see I think we see double digits, although we only need 9, but I think we get there. I think she's a big part of what they want to do. And I do think this isn't going to be a blowout. I think they may win by 12, maybe in the Dream, but I don't think it's going to be a beatdown where like Hillman sits the 4th. Maybe she does, but I think that's a good play and worth it at 8.5. You can certainly do over 9.5 at plus 100. So flat. 34 cents for 1 point. You know what? I'm going to do over 9.5 at flat. I think that's I know there's, West talks about laying the juice is better, but I'll do the plus over 9.5 plus 100. Minus 134 gets a little rich. So you can do both, maybe split it up half and half, but that's my play. That's someone I've been watching because she's aggressive. She's aggressive on offense, and she kind of the ball finds energy, as Jay Billis likes to say. So I will kind of bank on that and go back to my well and try to get my money back from the last game.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on that aggressiveness. I think the fact that she's a younger player on that veteran-laden team plays a big role in how she plays, right? Aggressiveness is a big part. She has the agility and the lateral athleticism to play that type of style. So I like that a lot. And she shoots great percentages, right? If she gets fouled, she's an 85% free throw shooter. So I think that extra point is a good look. I think, from 9 to 10 it is okay with me. The other thing is, if you look at the 5 starters from game 2, which ended up being a blowout, she played the best of the 5, right? Her plus minus was, I think, minus 11. Everybody else was in the 20s. She was actually the one starter that was keeping the game, relatively afloat. So I like that look a lot. And even if it's a blowout, and it depends on what you define as a blowout. But if this is a 15 to 18 point game in the 4th quarter, I think Hillman is still in the game. I think the fact it needs to be in the 25 range when they're going to bench a starter. So I would say Hillman's going to get her full minutes no matter what tonight, and I like that look at 9.5 just because of activity and aggressiveness.
She's a good player. Remember, she scored 50 plus in one game in college at Michigan. So she shoots the 3 really well. She was 0 for 4 from downtown, and we still almost got there. It's really painful watch, but that's okay. That's the beauty of betting props. It can be a painful watch on anything, sides, totals. Checking in on the comments section, PD already on Naz, and he agrees with Albert regarding Naz minutes, and I agree. That was a good observation by Albert. And don't forget, get involved in the conversation. Let us know your thoughts. We appreciate the feedback. Always constructive criticism is welcome. But in general, let us know bets you're sweating, bets you want maybe our input on, things along those lines. Let's ratchet up the collaboration, so to speak. The other decisive game 3 is in Las Vegas, where I am, with the Aces being 8-point home favorites, over under 158.5. And it looked like the Aces were going to cruise. They were up 9 with 4 minutes to go in game 2, looking for their 18th straight win, Albert. They were up 5 with $1.30 to go. up 2 with 45 seconds to go and the ball. But the Storm get it done in regulation. So they not only tied it, but won it. Malonga was big down the stretch. Did Seattle unlock anything for you to have faith in them tonight to maybe even just cover, let alone win outright?
I mean, props to Seattle, right? They had a 16-4 run to end that game. The crowd was going nuts. The energy was unbelievable there in the stadium. And not only Malonga, but Skylar Diggins with a throwback game. She ended it very strong there. Clutch basket, I think, with 4.5 seconds left. So the Storm did everything they could to win that game. I would say the Aces, in my opinion, and at this point it's tit for tat, but I would say the Aces lost that game more than Seattle, just winning that game, just because they were up big. I think they were coasting. Chelsea Gray at the end actually had a game tying 3. That was a great look. She barely missed. This is going to be my second leg of the parlay. Obviously, you know where I'm going. Aces money line. So it's minus 345 on the money line. For those on the Dream, it was minus 335. If you add the two up in a parlay, is minus 150. I love this play, and I don't do parlays often. This is going to be, let's make it a 2-unit play. I usually do only 1-unit bets on this show, on this program, but I like both home teams to get it done today. That was a nice win for Seattle. They've been struggling all year long in terms of closing out the game, and that was their one moment. That was their one game where everything fell right for them in terms of the last 3-4 minutes. I think Vegas takes care of business tonight, and they'll be, looking to face the Dream in the next round.
Mentioned the advanced stats, the last 15 games, net rating, they're number one. Aces have been great, right? But is regression coming? I mean, you're an analytics guy, right? You're a math guy. Regression doesn't just come for like a stretch here and there. Don't you think the Aces kind of come back to earth a little bit, and we've been waiting on the Seattle team to deliver?
I thought the Aces were going to come back down to earth 2 weeks ago. The fact that they continue to win, Doug, was honestly more more impressive than their first 13, 14 wins in a row. There were a lot of spots where I thought the other team had a good shot. They were 3 games and 4 nights on the road, things like that, and they were able not only to cover but blow out teams, and that's why A'ja Wilson's going to end up winning the MVP. We talked about this several times already on this show. All the moves that they made from a personnel standpoint, putting some players on the bench, that's props to the coaching staff there, but also props to the players buying into the new system. And I think, the Aces have the title aspirations squarely on their head. They know the Storm is in their way. And I don't think from a, talent perspective, the Storm can hang with them 2 of 3 games. I think the Aces will take care of business, but the great equalizer, like you said, is the spread. 8 points is a lot. 8 points is a lot in an elimination game. That means everybody expect the Aces to, not only bounce back tonight, but win by basically 3 possessions. That's a lot, against the Seattle Storm team that we saw. Malonga give this team specifically a lot of problems, because outside of A'ja Wilson, there's not much, athleticism in the size area. And so if Malonga can get, if Seattle and Malonga can get in a fast break and get easy baskets, then this is going to be a lot more competitive than most people expect. But I still fully expect, as you can see in my parlay, I expect the Aces to win and advance to the next round.
Yeah, I do too. Weird stuff happens in the playoffs, right? Like, let's just go back to the NBA recently. Remember 2 playoffs ago, Game 7, Nuggets up 20 in the second half over the T-Wolves, and they blow it. The Thunder with the Mavericks 2 years ago. This past year, I mean, the Nuggets had the Thunder on the ropes at home in Game 4. They were up 2-1 in the series. Live line, they were favored, and the Thunder closed. And then we saw all those 20-point comebacks in the playoffs at different games. I'm just waiting for that crazy game. Now, we saw one last night a little bit with Minnesota, right? They were down, 14 entering the 4th, and came back and won the game. I just worry that the Aces are due to play their worst game. Sometimes you just play your worst game at the wrong time. And I wonder, blowing that lead could have, then because they really outplayed them all game. So then it's like, oh, Las Vegas just had a bad game. And that could end up costing them a 3-game series.
I would say the Las Vegas Aces were a little surprised at Malanga. I think when
Yeah.
she entered the game, right, not only her athleticism and speed, but I don't think they expected her to play so much. So that surprise or that shock moment, I think it's gone, right? I think that was the ace that the Seattle had up their sleeve, Doug, and they played it. They played it perfectly. She ended not only did she play well in the first half and all that, but she ended the game for them, right? She ended the game being in the final 5 players, and she was a difference maker. Not only grabbing all the defensive rebounds for them, but getting out on the fast break. And I think that shock factor, if you will, like it's gone. I think Vegas will be able to adjust. And if Asia Wilson sees Malanga in game 3 guarding her, I think Asia's going to really go after her and get her into foul trouble. So I wouldn't worry too much about, the Aces playing their worst game, because I could make an argument that some of their wins were some of their worst games, right? But they were just so good. They were making so many threes. That one game where they hit, I don't know, 21 threes or something like that against the Sparks. Without the threes, the Sparks outplayed them. But if you include the threes, obviously that's not how basketball works. And I'm very confident in the Aces and Asia Wilson. And even from a narrative perspective, if you're not going to just look at the analytics and the numbers and the trends, I don't think they can have the MVP lose in the first round.
Assuming she's the MVP, and I agree that she probably is going to be. Let's talk about some props, because I jokingly said a second ago that I expected her. It looked like that Noelle Quinn was going to have to go all hands on deck, and Ezzy Magmador is just not getting it done. So in the last show, I had Malanga over her rebounds. Now the market's adjusted a little bit. I still like over the rebounds because Ezzy's like unplayable at this point. Yeah. So over 7.5 rebounds at Bet Rivers, -108 is my first official play on this game. I just think she's going to get the minutes, and her height and everything. I do like it in that regard. So I'm playing it. Now, to your point, they did have the shock and surprise factor, and I wonder if Becky Hammond is going to have a counter to that. But even so, Malanga can get, you get cheapy rebounds off missed free throws. You just, it's a back and forth game. Like both teams want to push pace, and Aces shoot a lot of threes. So Malanga is going to get boards, and she does look like Bambi out there, right? She's 19 years old, not quite fully formed, if you will, like a young deer. And she runs like a greyhound, had the big finish on the break that you talked about offensively, caught it, finished. She's going to be a star. She's got Wemby vibes. So that's awesome to see. The double-double is a possibility. Over 9.5 points is -121, I want to say. I'm just going to go with the rebounds. I think that's a safer bet with her length. She has to avoid foul trouble, but I think she's okay doing that. Asia's going to have some sort of like, not even mid-range, but like some mid-paint shots she's going to have to hit, because Malanga doesn't really jump. She just puts her hands up and contests. But Asia will stretch the defense, and Malanga will figure out a way. She's good enough to get 8 rebounds in this situation, even inexperienced at age 19.
Yeah, I like that Malanga look, just because we both know she's going to get a lot more minutes, moving forward. Whether it's this game, if they somehow upset Vegas in game 3, she's going to be getting a lot of minutes in the second round. The one bet I wanted to talk about outside of my money line parlay, which I know is very chalk, right? Dream and Aces money line parlay. I like the Aces in the first quarter. Right now at Bet Rivers is -2 at -113. It's an angle that I've used in the NBA a lot, where the superior team or the higher ranked team loses by a last second shot or loses by a buzzer. How do they usually come out in the first quarter of the very next game? If they have an MVP type caliber player, and I used to do this with the Bucks all the time when it was Bucks with Chris Middleton and Giannis, when they lost a close game, that first quarter, they're basically up by 15-20, just because Giannis and his attitude is like, I don't want to feel that again. Let me go out and, put my stamp on this game early and often. And I think Asia Wilson is cut in the same cloth, in my opinion. And so I like Aces here, -2 in the first quarter. So this is not truly a trifecta spot because I'm only on the first quarter and then the money line, but I do think the Aces are gonna come out and hit them in the mouth early and often. It's gonna be up to Seattle whether they can weather that storm, because we know the Aces, run, or the Aces, snowball of threes will happen sometime in this game. I just, I don't know if Seattle can push back.
Right. All right. I like it. I like the thought process there. Let's look ahead to tomorrow because both of us are not on the show. It'll be Sarah and Wes. We have one game 3 tomorrow to wrap up the first round. And that's the Phoenix Mercury, who absolutely opened a can on the Liberty in New York. And Wes and I both took +2.5 the day before the show, and then it closes 4.5. I don't get it. I don't understand the WNBA betting market. It can be so wrong sometimes. So the Mercury are now 2.5-point home favorites against New York. Now, remember, New York was favored by 1.5 in game 1. This is a tougher spot. We're not sure if Breanna Stewart's healthy. She was limping around. Sandy was playing her forever for some reason. So now they got to fly back. Phoenix, look, can I just tell people this is a lesson in critical thinking. Alyssa Thomas missed the layup at the end of game 1, okay? They lost the game. You cannot say if she makes the layup, it'd be a sweep and they'd be on the next round. Part of the reason that they blew them out in game 2 and the Liberty were relaxed is because the Liberty got the first game. Game 2 would not have played out in a vacuum the same way as if the Mercury had won game 1. It just doesn't work like that. Liberty would have been the desperate team. Liberty would have had more bounce in their step, and the Mercury would have been more relaxed and apathetic, if you will. Now, both teams should be desperate right now in theory. I don't think it's going to be a cakewalk, but I do like the Mercury here minus the 2.5. They're just better. The Liberty basically have a super high IQ with Sabrina, Stewie, some of these other players, but they're slow and they're unathletic. And I think the league has caught up to them. I also think the stars were aligned last year for the Liberty. So yes, they are the defending champs and no one can ever take that title away from them. But I don't think they'd win it in this field. I think that team caught every break. The Aces were 2-time defending champs in a million commercials. They were just out of gas. And then the other teams hadn't quite formulated to be more competitive. And then the Lynx, obviously Liberty got a favorable whistle in that series. So New York was very fortunate. They're not a dominant team. Sabrina's lack of mobility and athleticism is shining. That's why she's 8 for 31 in the series, including 4 for 20 or whatever it is. She shot a career low 29.9% from downtown during the regular season. She's just not that good. Sorry. I mean, she's a great ambassador for the game. She obviously can shoot the lights out, so she's a threat for opposing defenses, but she's more guardable now, I guess is a better way to put it. And the Mercury just have more ways to beat you, and they're better coached, and they play better defense. So I'm rolling with the home team here.
Doug, I'm so glad you are sticking to your guns because, for the last several weeks now, you've mentioned the Liberty being a farce of a team. And I completely agree with Doug. And it's not only or merely because the players are not as good as people make it out to be. Injuries play a big part of it, right? And they're not 100%. They haven't been 100% all season long. The reason why they're getting so much respect in the market, these games is because they are the defending champs and they have, 2 to 3 huge names. And because of that, as a casual bettor, you see Sabrina Ionescu on the tag, or you see Breanna Stewart, you're like, oh my gosh, they have to win, right? But for those who look into or follow the sport a lot closer, they've been struggling all season long. And so I like Phoenix here. Phoenix, I think this is a blowout, in my opinion, because I think the Liberty are going to get to a point where it might be competitive for the first quarter or two. And if the Phoenix Mercury go on a run in that second half, Doug, I think the Liberty are going to wave the white flag. And they don't have the horses, if you will, to come back from 20 points, right? So I think if this is a game where Mercury's up 3 or 5 points at halftime, I would actually press the Mercury here because I think they're only going to get better and stronger as the game goes on. So I like that look a lot. Mercury minus 2.5 is going to be a full unit play for me tomorrow as well.
All right. I like it. Yeah, look, I think the Liberty, who have championship aspirations, deep down know they don't have it. They just know. And you saw it on the bench when they were whispering to each other, covering their mouth and talking. They don't have it. They're beat up. They're disjointed and they're just slow, and there's just really no way to kind of get around it. And it's funny, the one person who they acquired midseason was trying to change up things was Emma Miesemann, and she's even slower than the rest of the team. And opposing defenses go under every screen and dare Natasha Cloud to shoot, and she's not really the answer. So I just think there's a lot of issues in that regard. Checking in on the chat section. Henry VIII, though, likes Liberty for the money with the Statue of Liberty emoji and the cash sign. So that's kind of funny and cool. Others chiming in. Petey had a rocking chair win with Stewie under points last night. And this is interesting to me. Henry VIII says, I would rather watch a Minnesota-Las Vegas final than New York in the finals. How about you? Well, New York's not getting to the finals. They are matched up where they would have to face Minnesota in the second round, and they're not getting past the Lynx. They're not good. I mean, part of me wants to lose this bet so I can bet against them more games against the Lynx, but it's just they're just not good. Like, I don't know what else to tell you. They have stretches where they're elite. Don't get me wrong, but they're just stretches. It's way too inconsistent. If you look at the last 2 months, they've been, let me put it this way. Of the 8 playoff teams, okay? So let's trim the fat, throw out the sun, throw out the wings. Of the 8 playoff teams, over the last 15 games, now Albert's right, there's been some injuries here and there, but other teams, mailed it in the last few games of the season because they were situated. They rank dead last in defensive rating, pace, and turnover percentage. So they've just been a choppy team that's sluggish and much more guardable because there's more 3-and-D players in the league. There's more athleticism. That things aren't happening. And then Sabrina gets risky with her passes, which she's always been a little risky. But now there's just better defense. There's not clueless defenders because the game is evolving. The players in the league are now have a higher feel for the game. So this advantage that the Liberty always had isn't there. It's not as pronounced as it once was.
And I would say a couple of things, right? To answer what Doug mentioned yesterday, the line opened up, for game 2 at 2.5, and it moved to 4.5. I think a lot of that was because of the reaction to Breanna Stewart. She, she was in, full shoot around participant, and she was basically gearing up to play. So that's why all that money and all that movement went to New York. The other thing was New York has stretches where they show that they're elite. I agree with that, but at the same time, that's basically because they're making their threes at that time, right? It's not because they're out, it's not because they're faster than someone. It's not because they're more athletic than someone. It's just because they're knocking down threes. And if you rewatch their championship run from last year, Sabrina was making those 30-foot step back threes, right? And that's not sustainable, right? That's not a style of play that's going to win you championships several times. It was a beautiful, run last year, and I think Doug hit it right on the nose. They're gonna require a big, off-season change, whether it's personnel or coaching, but they need athleticism on this team, because if they're gonna rely on Sabrina to be that, focal point, tip of the spear type in terms of the offense, it's not gonna fly, just because not only is she not quick enough, and I think this is where someone like her and the Paige Beckers differ, because Paige isn't fast and she doesn't play fast, Doug, but her handle is incredible and her footwork is great. And I think that's what separates her from Paige, or separates her from Sabrina, because she can get her shot off. Whereas Sabrina, she relies on the offense manipulating the defense to get, unbalanced, and then she can really do her thing. And right now she doesn't have the speed or the agility to get around players. She's always been a turnover machine, even at her younger years, just because she's undersized. When you put a bigger defender on her, she can't look over the defender. And so she's throwing these really lazy bounce passes or, lob passes that actually don't even make it, inside the court. So Sabrina's a great player. I know we're trashing her and all that. She's an all-star player. Not only is she a great ambassador for the game, but she's a great role model. She has her own shoe with Nike. She's done great things. She's a champion, and they wouldn't have won last year without her amazing shot making.
No doubt.
But there are limitations to her game, and she's at a stage now in her career, she's not going to get faster from now, right? Next year she's not going to be more athletic, so they're going to have to make a couple moves from a personnel standpoint to help her.
Well said, and well said. And look, she's still 27. She's still got, many years left. It's just, I just think the league's gotten better. I mean, that's the thing. The IQ of opposing players has gotten better and the athleticism. So they'll figure it out. I just think they need to flip Jonquel Jones or someone. The beauty of Phoenix is all the pieces fit. So Alyssa Thomas cannot shoot, but she's surrounded by shooters. So when she plays bully ball and gets to the paint or the mid paint shots and floaters, it's really tough because she's surrounded. The bigs of Phoenix can shoot. Like Mac can hit the baseline jumper. Bonner can hit threes. Alyssa Thomas is a big herself. And then she's surrounded by Sammy and everyone else who can bomb threes. So it's just all the pieces fit. The problem with the Liberty is there's no fluidity to their offensive half court sets. Everyone, like Jonquel's lazy and she just wants to shoot threes and things. Stewie's good, but she's banged up and she's later in her career. But she's has a career low in her shooting percentage. So both her and Sabrina career low in shooting percentage. And it's just not going to get it done. Look, I laid it with Minnesota last night, but it all came down to the 3-point percentage. The Valkyrie shot 50%. The Lynx did not. So it's going to come down to that. And I think the Mercury are just a much more reliable team. And I'm going to martingale the heck out of this team until they're eliminated. And I think it happens in game 3. And if they win, I'm just going to keep betting against them. They're going to get exposed, and they already are starting to get exposed. Couple comments. Just want to bring them to the equation. Henry VIII talking about, Minnesota's obviously onto the second round. My concern is that they are such a popular and obvious favorite and have been for a while. I like Las Vegas for that reason. I don't know. What do you think about that? I don't get too concerned with, they're the obvious choice. If Minnesota's that good, they're that good. Now, I've been saying all year that I have my reservations. If gun to my head, I would pick Minnesota to win it all because I also think they have an easier path. But I do think, we saw yesterday, that you can get McBride off her spots. You can get Courtney Williams off her spots. They're not top heavy with talent like maybe Phoenix is with 3 elite players. But the system is great. They play great defense. Alana Smith, co-defensive player of the year, announced within the last hour. So there's a lot to like, and Fee's fantastic. But they are beatable. This is not a dominant 1 seed. I think Atlanta's it. I think if Phoenix advances, I think all 4 teams are right there in the mix.
Yeah, when you ask about, whether they're the obvious choice or not, they're they are the number 1 seed for a reason, right? They've been the best team all season long, and that's not just because of how they play offense, right? They are a great defensive team as well. And a big chunk of this season was with Nafisa out of the lineup, right? The fact that we saw them continue to, roll teams without their best player offensively, I think is a really big sign that this is the best team. And I know that, when we're talking about systems and, a system quarterback in the NFL, you just need to take out the pieces and maybe just let Nafisa do her thing. And then, the role players are going to struggle. But the beauty of Minnesota is if McBuckets is off, they could just bring someone off the bench and she's going to be 85, 90% as good. And I think that's the reason why building a team of depth has a lot of value as opposed to a team with, three top end stars and then a bunch of role players. So there's a lot of things I would say that, makes me like Minnesota. But Doug is right. Just like every team, no team is flawless, right? Any team can get hot, especially in a series where, injuries will play a factor. We've seen Nafisa already out this season. So, it's going to take, whether it's the Aces or the Dream, it's going to take a really valiant effort from them to beat Minnesota. But right now, they're the runaway favorite for a reason. And I continue to like this team just because if Nafisa doesn't win the MVP award, and I mentioned this already, it's very similar to Hakeem Olajuwon in 95, seeing David Robinson get the trophy right in front of him. And Hakeem basically just ate his shorts, right? He completely ate his lunch and dominated that series and went on to win the finals against, I think that was the Knicks year, right? So I still like Minnesota no matter what.
They're the rightful favorite, as you said. They were the 1 seed for a reason. All right, my man, that's going to do it for this edition of Betting Weekly Fast Break. So like I said, Sarah, and Wes are on the show tomorrow. They got you covered in terms of the game 3 in Phoenix, and also looking ahead to the weekend, as these two teams or these two games will produce a winner that advances to the next round. So that's going to do it for this show. Thanks to Albert and Nguyen. Thanks to producers Andrew and Max, and everyone else behind the scenes who makes everything look so good and so awesome. I am Doug Kezirian. Best of luck with all your wagers tonight, and we'll see you back here next time.